Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today, February 10th, a Saturday, 2024. We're going to go over today La Nina Watch issued by NOAA with the Climate Prediction Center and a whole bunch of other stuff, including more new climate models that have come out for the month of February. Let's get on right with it to the sea surface temperature anomalies. First, starting off, as of yesterday, updated. First, several things you could see is the very warm Atlantic continues. Very classic look from the Canary Current down into the MDR. Plus this look over here in the subtropics, which a bunch of these cooler anomalies overhead as well. And even look at the Enso region, you could see here, still very warm, but you notice we're starting to see kind of these cooler shades beginning to pop up in the Enso. And that is kind of the one of the first signs that La Nina is really beginning to pop up. We're starting to see cracks now in the El Nino, and that is definitely a sign that the El Nino is weakening for sure. And once you compare that to with just how monstrously warm and of an Atlantic that we got, I've been seeing, especially over the last week, a lot of people comparing this year to past years, and none of them at all compare. Even last year, we don't compare an overall warmth energy in the Atlantic in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies that we do to other years. And once this El Nino goes away, and by the time we get to hurricane season, how much this persists will really be key once again into how much activity we'll get. Because no doubt, at least in my mind, even I could say for February, that we're going to get an active season. I mean, the pieces are just there. We have a El Nino that is very likely to transition into a La Nina. Now, of course, that we have the NOAA Climate Prediction Center issuing a La Nina watch, and of course, this very warm Atlantic picture, which has remained since last year. Lots of things to pay attention to, especially when it comes to the realm of climate factors. And they're all just lining up, and it's going to be very interesting to see just how well they line up for the season. But just to emphasize once again, Nina 3.4, we're now continuously on a decrease, especially since early this year. We peaked out at over 2 degrees, 2.2 to be exact, Celsius on the Nina 3.4. And now, as of February, we're now at our lowest point, which is under 1.6. So we're barely now at that moderate El Nino, moderate strong El Nino kind of like dividing point threshold. And it's probably just going to go lower from here on out. We have, of course, a westerly wind burst in the Pacific. And I guess you could say that it's kind of helping to exhaust all of the remaining heat, and which is why we're now, instead of seeing an increase in sea surface temperature anomalies in the Nino 3.4, we're seeing them decrease. While in the Atlantic, on the other side, things have been generally on the warm side. Recent decrease in the NOAA Coral Reef Watch, but we're still at 1.2 degrees Celsius, and we compare that basically since last year, we have not gotten below since November. This graph goes all the way out still to mid-November, and we have not dipped below zero point 0.8 degrees Celsius. And honestly, anything that really considers, in my opinion, a really warm Atlantic is anything above zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius above normal. And we're well above that. Heck, we've not even dipped below 1 degree Celsius, a full 1 degree Celsius above normal in the entire MDR since the start of the new year. And let's just think, and if you're wondering, 1 degree Celsius, hey, that does not sound like a lot. Well, obviously, if you think about it in terms of a bathtub, you heat it up to only a degree Celsius above an average of what the room temperature may be. Maybe that's not a lot of energy over one small area, but we're talking about the Atlantic Ocean, which is a vast area of several thousand miles of water temperatures that are a full degree Celsius above where they should be. And that is a lot of energy, extra energy added to the ocean. Oceans, once again, and probably a reminder that you should always remember, oceans are huge energy source, probably one of the biggest energy sources in the world comes from the ocean. And the fact that we have this at a full degree Celsius above normal for at least an entire month now since the beginning of the year And that, I will tell you right now, that's not going to go away for sure, even if we have small dips like we have here and there. But even then, I want to show you this NOAA Coral Reef Watch. This is the same area, the Atlantic MDR, but instead of NOAA Coral Reef Watch, this is the OI SST map. And interestingly enough, they don't have this decreasing at all. This is the NOAA Coral Reef Watch, by the way, and then this is the OI SST. Very interesting, honestly. One of them has this kind of decreasing, one of them doesn't. That kind of did kind of, catch my eye off a little bit, but you got to remember NOAA Coral Reef Watch and OISST, they're two different methodologies in calculating sea surface temperature anomalies and general sea surface temperatures as a whole. But I think the most important thing to remember, they're still generally within the same realm of each other. Both show, most importantly, above 1 degree Celsius, even if they have slight differences here and there. Bottom line is Atlantic is very warm, and that is definitely a huge factor that we're going to watch closely in the next several months, as well as, obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Climate Prediction Center in their most recent February update has issued a La Nina watch, and that is because they expect El Nino to transition to ENSO neutral by spring, by late spring. They give that a 79% chance, and they believe La Nina will develop in June to August of 2024, and they give that a 55% chance. And you can read their whole discussion that they have here on their website. Very easy, just go to climatepredictioncenter.com and you can look at that, and it'll probably be one of the first things to pop up that you can look at their webpage. And this is also represented here in their graph. This is a graph that they do every single month, outlining the probabilities of each ENSO category. And as they outline, the blue bar right here, this represents La Nina, and those chances really peak out by the time we get to the second half of the year. And most importantly, pay attention to this time period. That is the peak hurricane season, August, September, October. That's what these letters represent. Their tri-monthly values. And at that point, we have now, as of February, an over 70% chance of La Nina, which is expected. So lots of things pointing in the direction, once again, towards La Nina. Recent SOI, though, still kind of lagging behind with that. Of course, we still have a westerly wind burst ongoing in the Pacific. I believe so. Or at least over the last few weeks we did. And that is kind of taking a hit on the SOI. We're now back down to -7 points, at least in the 30-day average, and the daily contribution is still well into the negatives. But I'm going to show you here right now. This is by the zonal wind anomalies going forward. That is not really expected to continue for much longer. Obviously, you can see why the SOI kind of dipped. You see these reds here. This is the zonal wind anomalies, aka the trade winds. By the way, right along the Pacific too, just to make sure, right along the equator, obviously where El Nino and La Nina happens. We had a bunch of these red anomalies, and that is, of course, westerly winds compared to the average. And that has been the case since late January, hence why we've seen the big crash that I just showed you in the SOI. But take a look going forward, especially around 180 degrees, and that's roughly around the international dateline. Look what begins to show up. Blues. So that represents we're soon going to start going away from these strong westerly wind bursts, and eventually we'll start seeing these blues fill in. And I'm pretty sure in the next several weeks and months, heading closer towards spring, we'll probably see a lot more of these begin to fill in, and eventually that'll help us kickstart our La Nina, not only atmospherically, but oceanically as well, as if it's not already clear that we're probably going to head towards one at some point this year. And as I did mention last week, we did get the CANSIPs and we did get the CFS, and now we have the more models too. And I'm just going to show this one, the C3S model. And Andy Hazelton talked about this, and he mentions CS3 coming out June and July. He shows here with a warm MDR and lots of precipitation anomalies that show robust wave tracks too. And really quickly, first want to show the sea surface temperature anomalies, and look at that. This is from March. This is from March of 2024. Look at that. Very warm anomalies in the Atlantic persists. And this is, I just noticed, as of March. So they still have a generally warmer Pacific. But by the time we get to July, this is what the precipitation map is. As I showed you last week, the CFS and CANCIPs both have very active precipitation pattern in the deep tropics. And so does this model as well. And the reason why I wanted to show you this model too is because, let me kind of zoom out a little bit. Forgot to close my DMs, but hope you didn't see anything anyway. But it doesn't matter, it's fine. But Andy Hazelton mentioned the C3S, and I wanted to show you specifically the C3S because the C3S, like the NMME, is kind of a combination, if you will, of multiple different major climate models kind of condensed into one model. And he mentions that in a tweet. Generally similar looks for all the various climate models at this range, all at July 2024. And look at that. This is the Met Office, so this is the UK Met climate model. That shows a very active precipitable look in the deep tropics in July, kind of pointing towards the Caribbean as well. And then not only that, European too, very active July, probably very favorable in the deep tropics. And even the JMA model, and show you this one here, the Meteo France model too. That one is really robust, especially off Eastern Africa. Western Africa, or Eastern Atlantic, I should say, West Africa, Eastern Atlantic. You get the gist. Probably very strong waves will come off Africa, and that'll probably mean a lot more chances, especially early on, for potentially robust development too. All generally falling in line, and some people here, like one person here, Rob Lightbound. I actually follow this guy. He's a pretty good guy, especially when it comes to weather. I mean, obviously he is verified. He does mention, geez, that July precipitation anomaly map looks similar to another July that we had with Category 5 for Hurricane Dennis and Category 5 Emily. Gonna make you guess what year that is, but if you know your hurricane history, that probably is a very interesting one. And God, do I hope not that we have that kind of July, seriously. But I mean, I'm just gonna show you the Cantips too. Same look from all the other models that we showed you. A lot of green in the deep tropics, probably suggestive of very strong tropical waves, and that look in the Caribbean too, very eerily similar to that we saw that Rob just mentioned in the tweet that we just showed you. Obviously, not everything is comparable to the top 3.3% of seasons that we see in the Atlantic. Not always will we get that sort of activity, but when you look at this, and especially when you look at how warm the Atlantic is, you just kind of have to start wondering, and that's all I'm going to leave it at that. But certainly the bigger picture to take away is, at least in the early season standpoint, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the season kind of remains the same. The picture looks active, and once again, just going back to what Andy Hazelton mentions, generally favorable Atlantic hurricane season by June and July. And once again, he also mentions that this agrees with the NMME model too, which is another model, once again, like the C3S, that's kind of a international model ensemble that kind of takes a bunch of major climate models and puts them into one big kind of model output. And they both agree on the same look: active precipitation and generally favorable Atlantic, which is very interesting, especially once again when you look at this. So the pieces of the puzzle, they're all coming together. They're all kind of shaping up. Even if it's February, as I always mention, it's definitely not too early, I should say, to look at climate models now, especially since we're in February, and February is obviously the shortest month of the year. Before you know it, we're going to be in March, and we'll be into that time frame where we'll start to see a lot of people say that the climate models will begin to matter. So definitely in that time period where things begin to get more interesting, and surprisingly, or not surprisingly, depending on the way you look at it, the models still show and agree that this year could potentially be quite an active one, to say the very least. Some people already say potentially historic season. Obviously, don't want to go that far out since, after all, it is still only February. Really quickly though, before we go, I did want to kind of end out on a look across the United States. I was trying to figure out what to say, but usually something that we do at the beginning of my videos, I'm doing at the end today. The kind of a look across what's going on in the United States right now, just to kind of highlight weather that we've seen over the last week and kind of give a brief view of weather to come because it's going to be active. We've had, remember that atmospheric river event across California. They got a whole lot of rain, Grammys almost questions about how the Grammys were going to play out because of how much rain we got. I think LA broke rain records or San Diego. I don't know which one of the two, but one of the two broke rain records for single or 2 day overall rainfall. And man, when I tell you this is an atmospheric river, this is an atmospheric river. Just look at this. Shifted even further south and also closer towards the east now. So instead of all that moisture streaming into California, now it's streaming all the way into portions of Texas and the southeast. And this is going to transform and help develop our next system, which will move into the northeast, probably dump quite a bit of snow for portions of the interior northeast, probably up to a foot in some areas. The coast looks to be right now kind of a mixing situation. Still kind of a 50-50 shot to see how that plays out. But of course, given our luck this year, admittedly, I'm a snow weenie. I live in New York City, but we've not really had that great luck with snow this year. And maybe this system is kind of looking out to be something that we kind of, you know, we should not keep our hopes too high for some people mentioning mixing could be an issue. But other than that, rain across the portions of Texas, going to see a lot of heavy rain. And I'll go to the weather.gov, the National Weather Service website. Winter storm watches have indeed already been issued for portions of the interior Northeast. And actually, did not know, but also winter storm warnings in effect for northern Texas. So this is probably giving them some snow too, just like it'll give snow to portions of the Northeast. Winter storm watches in effect, and I'll just at least give you the breakdown. In New York, I believe, expecting up to, in some areas, 6 to 8 inches with higher amounts up to 10 inches. So a lot of these interior areas could get up to a foot of snow. And if you're a snow lover, great. If you're not a snow lover, oh well. But if you are a snow lover right now, all I'm gonna say is I envy you. And I wish I could get some of that snow, but obviously you can't always get everything you want. But active coming up over the next several weeks. Also did see something about the polar vortex, which could potentially break down, and we could have a sudden stratospheric warming event. Maybe it could keep us kind of in this more active eastern United States pattern, like we saw last month in January for a while before we kind of went quiet. Maybe that'll be the case heading into the rest of the month and into next month, March, too. And when it comes to the Atlantic, in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies, obviously that would have separate implications for us, especially when we're talking about hurricane season, though that's something we could probably talk a little bit more about once we get to. But just to really quickly wrap up, if you want to take something away from the video, La Nina watch issued by the Climate Prediction Center. Atlantic is very warm. Lots of people really been interested in how warm it is, and it is honestly mind-boggling. Sometimes you really gotta wonder how is it so warm, but obviously that's gonna take a whole lot of rabbit holes and climate speculation. The bottom line is just the Atlantic is really warm, and the question right now for hurricane season is how much of that warmth does persist to June 1st, and how strongly does this La Nina come in? Because I don't really think right now it's a question about if La Nina comes, because that basically does seem like it's an obvious answer now. The main question is how strong and how much. Two most important things we'll be watching very closely over the next several months and weeks, of course, to come. And I really do hope that you could stay with us through that journey, because it is a journey. Trust me, it really is a journey, honestly. And I really do hope if you like what you saw today, I encourage you, like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends. Keep the community growing. Been getting a lot of new subscribers recently. And I really appreciate you very deeply for subscribing. I really do appreciate it. Trust me, I do. Um, and I really do hope that you can maybe share that as well with other people. get more subscribers going, and hopefully get a bigger community as well. Just goals for 2024, hopefully, that we can achieve. Maybe not always, but we'll see. Thanks for watching, though. Stay safe. It's a very dangerous world right now, especially with all that's going on right now. So really encourage you to stay safe, stay peaceful, and give love and peace to everybody, always. And we'll see you again very soon.